video journal debrief for sessions 1 through 8. In session 1, I received an impressive synopsis of the history of the United Nations Conference of Parties, and Tong emphasized an idea that is continually mentioned throughout the sessions, the idea of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. This quote from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change is regularly reiterated by the speakers as something that is crucial in gaining a global climate perspective, especially in building solidarity and finding equitable solutions between the global north and the global south. In session 2, Saeed illustrated and explained the graphs and compared the current emissions trajectories against the necessary targets. I was astonished to find that it is projected that based on our current policy, the atmosphere will reach a baseline of 4.1 to 4.8 degrees Celsius above industrial levels. The results of this trajectory will have massive consequences, including rendering much of the equator unlivable, draining many important water features, and leaving the majority of agricultural land unusable by mid-century. In session 4, Solheim provided a much more optimistic perspective, more similar to the Gates reading, suggesting that nations will transition through innovation to low-carbon economies and outgrow our dependence on oil and coal, and even found similarities in the rhetoric between President Biden and President Xi Jinping in talking about climate. I'm grateful to hear from the speakers that gave a bit of a less Eurocentric perspective and shared their first-hand understandings of how climate justice fights look in the global south, including Nyong and the climate activists from session 8. It was eye-opening to hear how countries in Africa are moving forward and creating infrastructure that allows a leapfrog from the status quo into sustainability. These climate activists reminded me of the empowering stories of women outlined in the Mary Robinson reading. Hearing how youth movements have grown in Africa gives me hope for seeing the same growth here in the United States, and I hope that lasting connections are made between the American students and the Rwandan students that could create an international bridge for future communication, spread the climate message, and grow intersectional solidarity. My favorite speaker so far in this class has been Yeb Sano, which provided a valuable contrast from the international diplomatic perspective of Dr. Niera. Sano emphasized that the fossil fuel giants that have perpetuated the problems have known for decades about the consequences of their exploitation of the land and yet have continued in oil exploration without any regard to these consequences. He has also spoke for the need for people to be at the forefront of the climate conversation and has mentioned his time at the Copenhagen People Summit, which was coordinated in parallel during the 2009 COP15. This point was reinforced by the Great Derangement, especially in Part 2 when Gosh outlined the way the language of climate agreements in diplomatic settings have become weaker from Kyoto to Paris. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to hear from all these climate activists and leaders, and I look forward to the fascinating perspectives of the upcoming session.